Good to go. Good evening. Welcome to Sankofa Videos and Books. Round of applause for yourselves. Appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening's discussion with Barasa La Wanachi. Yeah, I wanted to try to pronounce that. A People's Forum on the State of Kenya. This will be a discussion about the Gen Z uprising in Kenya 2 years ago. Our organizers, Joy, Ruka, and Wanjiru, will lead this very exciting discussion. And a round of applause for our participants and all our organizers for making this possible. And we've also got a few books on Kenyan history and contemporary politics over in the back. You can definitely check that out in case you're interested. Quick acknowledgement to my man that has disappeared. Round of applause for our film crew. Ah, there she is back there. And you can check us out anytime on Sankofa VB on YouTube if you want to catch this event or any past events. And check us out at sankofa.com to be aware of future events. Sankofa DC if you use social media as well. We host events like this all the time, so you can check us out at those sources if you want to know more about that. And my name is Jonathan. I'm one of the curators here. If you have any questions about the books, please let me know. Anything that you don't see here, please let me know. So let's see. We also have a lot of recurring events that happen here all the time. Crescent Moon Nights, open mic poetry, New Age open mic poetry, as well as the On Our Mind series, which chronicles Sudan, Congo, Haiti, and Gaza as well. So it's just a way to keep ourselves aware of what's going on in the world. And so we've got that, and we've also got a lot of summertime programs that we're getting launched off the ground. So Dalan Yaro, which is a film by a filmmaker from Djibouti, we'll be screening that on the 3rd of July. It's going to be an outside screening, if I'm not mistaken, so very exciting. We also have Kente Weaving, and that's going to be going on from July 18th to August 23rd. Saturdays are going to be for the kids from 11 to 2, and Sundays for the adults, again, from 11 to 2. And we also have dance classes that are going to start July 1st at 8:30 a.m. We also have Swahili, funny enough, y'all are in here. We have Swahili classes and live music as well. Those are still TBD, but we'll let y'all know as soon as we can. And of course, you can check out those aforementioned sources, sankofa.com, Sankofa DC, for more details on that as they come. So, quick rule of thumb, if y'all don't mind, please put your phones on silent or vibrate if you don't mind, just to make sure we don't get any interruptions. And if we are involved in any of the Q&A and any discussion, please keep the microphone up here and not down here. So right up here, and we'll be able to hear you clearly. So now we are also taking donations for Baba Haile's films, the Black Lions, Roman Wolves film that is nearing completion, as well as the Maroons, which is about the Maroons of the United States of America. It's a story that spans from the dismal swamps of Virginia all the way down into Mexico. So very exciting film project. If you want to know more about how to support, please come see me at the front counter for more information. Now, finally, upcoming events. We've got Haiti on Our Mind tomorrow from 7 to 9. Monday, from 6 to 8, we've got Caribbean cocktails, drinks, and bites from the Afro-Latino diaspora. And on Tuesday, from 10:30 to 12:30 p.m., a very rare morning program, we have an Adasi teaching, The Sound of Extinction, How Rap Music Glorifies Our Destruction. And now, without further ado, introducing to you this evening's feature discussion commemorating the anniversary of the Gen Z uprising in Kenya with Barasa La Wanachi, a People's Forum on Kenya. A round of applause for our discussants, Joy, Ruka, and Wanjiri. Enjoy the show.
Thank you so much. Really nice to see all of you on a Saturday in the summer. Today is a very special occasion. We remember, we say, the fallen soldiers of the Gen Z uprising in 2024. We continue to deal with a regime that is corrupt, a regime that continues to abuse human rights. And what we are hoping that at the end of this conversation that we will be marking and beginning to recreate a blueprint that will shape the future of Kenya. This session here is to unlearn and relearn, but most importantly, to voice our opinions about the state of our country. I want to first thank the Sankofa for always giving us this platform and this space where we can always voice our opinions every time that we want to. Thank you, Haile. Thank you, Abella. Thank you, Marie, too. Thank you, Gaza. Thank you so much. And also, just to let you know, the 625 movement, for those who don't know, means June 25th movement. It's an organization that we formed to remember those who passed away in 2024. But other than that, we're highly involved in community engagement and we're highly involved in lobbying as well. And we think of ourselves as revolutionaries. So anyone who wants to join, feel free to join. And anyone who wants to support the work that we do, we are you can buy a T-shirt. That money goes a long way in administrative work and also in funding the Bail Fund of Kenya, where since 2024 there are people who are still in custody that we are continuing to work to get them released. As of this week, there are other more people in custody. The term that I'm being reminded to use is they've been abducted by the states. So thank you so much. And there is also the website if you want to check it out. It's www.the625movement.com. I'll pass the mic over to our program director who will be emceeing this, and her name is Joy Nampaso.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making time and being with us today. We want to get started. So we're here to not only honor the martyrs, Matai, in Kenya we call them Matayas. I don't know the English pronunciation here in America, but not just of the uprising in 2024, but the Project Kenya has seen many martyrs since 1963 and even before then. So we're here to keep the fire going. We don't want that loss to be. We don't want the loss to be in vain. We want to learn why our country is the way it is, and what our future is gonna look like. Actually, outside of all the fracas that we see every day, what does the future actually look like for us and for future people who live in the boundaries of Kenya? So I'm gonna ask us to stand. I don't know if you have a candle. If you have a candle next to you, they're electric, so the switch is on the bottom, and give it a twist. And yes, let's get out. So we're here today to remember the lives that we've lost, the lives that were killed by colonial forces during the struggle for independence, including mass detention, torture, and the killing of the Mau Mau fighters and suspected sympathizers. We're here to remember the lives of the political opponents assassinated during the Kenyatta and Moi regimes for challenging the state, and dissidents who are held for years as political detainees. In 2024, we lost 65 deaths. We know that was higher, even though this was the official statistics. We had 3,000 people who were arrested and 83 targeted activist abductions. A few weeks after that, there was a discovery of multiple dismembered women in sacks that had been killed during the protests. In October 2024, we had anti-Ruto mobilizations, and more people were shot on the streets by the police. In June 2025, Albert Ojwang, who was an online activist, was murdered in a police cells. 6 protesters were shot during peaceful marches for Albert Ojwang, and more people disappeared, never to be seen again. More recently, in May 2026, the fuel prices were up, people went on the streets, and more citizens were shot dead by security forces. In May of this year, the president decided to build an Ebola facility for Americans. Kenyans went on the streets, and more people were killed during those protests. As of today, there are 269 unresolved femicide murders. We remember their lives. We remember those who were never found and those who were murdered by a brutal system. We also want to remember the quiet losses, the millions who have been lost to a dysfunctional country, the people who have lost their lives to broken health systems, broken justice systems, broken transportation systems, and people who have lost their life in many countries outside of Kenya, looking for a better life who never came home. We're going to observe a few minutes, a few seconds of silence as we think of these lives. I hope they can encourage us to do better and to learn and to work more to ensure that countless lives are not lost. Thank you, everyone. You may have a seat. So every seat has a worksheet, and one of the first activities I want us to do is we have a worksheet. The first section is a personal commitment, something that you are committing to do to demand accountability and to support victims. This is not something for you to ask somebody else to do, it's for you to do when you leave today. What are you going to do to demand accountability and to support those victims? So take a few seconds, select one thing on that worksheet, and ensure that when we meet next year, you can hold yourself accountable as well. So the first person I will call up is a friend of the 625 movement, Nedfa. Sorry. Nedfa is gonna just give us very brief remarks, but he's a friend of us, a great supporter who was with us last year during our anniversary in Baltimore. And he's here today as well. Netfa Freeman is a decades-long organizer. He's an organizer at the Pan-African Community Action. He's in the coordinating committee of the Black Alliance for Peace. And he is also the coordinator for BAP's Africa team. Is that correct? And Netfa was actually in Kenya a few weeks ago during the Pan-Africanism Summit Against Imperialism. We know that the French have been kicked out, or at least looks like they've been kicked out of West Africa. And of course, Kenya is the next stop for them. So, come on.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Is it evening already? Yeah. Thank you. July, wait a minute, June 26th movement. So I'm used to the numbers, 626, 625. And 26 is Cuba. So to make this brief, I guess it has to be brief. So we were the Black Alliance for Peace delegation from the Africa team was invited to be part of the Pan-Africanism Summit Against Imperialism in Nairobi, Kenya. And this was, many of you will know, that there was this what was called an Africa Forward Summit. They called it Africa Forward. At first it was called France Africa Summit. And it's basically, as was said, France is trying to angle itself, as imperialism needs to do. It's dependent on Africa and for the plundering of Africa, the mineral resources and the labor and all of that. And so that's no different, since the initial times of colonization. And so as the status of France has waned, particularly in the countries like in the Sahel, the Alliance of Sahel states and other countries, and it doesn't mean they're completely kicked out. This is a process. It's going to take a long time, and it also is going to require the whole of the African continent. But they have started that, and so France has sought to find some other fertile ground for its neo-colonialism, and they're looking at Kenya as one of the places to reestablish it. As far as they're concerned, it's what's referred to as the Anglophone countries. So they're looking to some place where they haven't really. Well, it's not that they haven't been there, but not like they are in their own former colonies. And so the Pan African Summit Against Imperialism was a counter summit to the France Africa Summit, and it took place from May 11th to the 13th, or May something, just only a few days, and it was about 300, maybe 300 folks that attended. And they're from different places around the world. Many Kenyans, obviously, and then also many people from other countries, South Korea, the United States. We were from the U.S., from Latin America countries, and so there's and from Europe, um, and the workshops and everything were very inspiring. I think very insightful. We're talking about people with a keen sense of what the system is that we're up against. We're not just up against people who are holding offices in any particular country. We're up against the system that's being upheld by agents of agents in these countries. And so I think that's one thing that was very clear. One of the things that I appreciated that came up in the summit was defining Pan-Africanism, because I think this is very important. As we read, I referred to it, as we refer to as revolutionary Pan-Africanism, as a way to distinguish what can be maybe a little loosely applied and used around. So we're trying to acknowledge, or at least assert, make the distinction between, it has to be Pan-Africanism is more, it should be more of an objective, that we reach the unification of the continent of Africa, the being anti-capitalism, because capitalism is the system that undergirds all the exploitation exploitation that undergirds colonialism, and also a socialism. What are we trying to build? What's going to really distribute wealth and power and everything on the mass to other people? And that's only one system that's going to take us out of the capitalism and into something else, and that's the socialism. And so I thought that was very clear that they wanted to define this Pan-Africanism, and it was something that us in Pan-African Community Action are aligned with. It's our own definition as well. I mean, there was a number of other inspiring things. The number of people that were there from different movements that were radical, and I think and this was the what are you gonna call it? I don't know, adventurous part of it. Was there was a demonstration of march. We were going to march to the Dedan Kamati statue from where the summit was taking place, and in that march, they decided that the authorities decided to attack. And I know y'all know about the demonstrations in Kenya. They're lethal, right? I think that because of the international presence in it, we didn't go through what normally people go through, but it was still pretty brutal nonetheless. People got beaten. They shot tear gas at us. I have to admit that I had never been through anything like that. And then when you're hearing these tear gas things shot, the shooting of it, you don't know what's being shot. You just know it's boom, and so everybody, it starts running, and then you see tear gas, and then you're running, and then some people got abducted and beaten, and they put them in jail and whatnot. Now they treated the internationalist delegates a little worse. They held them longer, and they were processing them for deportation and to ban them from coming back into the country. We suspect that this was because internationalism is the Achilles heel of imperialism. They can't afford for people around the world to get together and to figure out ways to challenge an imperialism. So this is a lesson. Don't come into this country, this is the comprador class, and probably getting their orders from the French. Don't come into this country and think you're going to establish and join up with the resistance, the integral resistance movement that's here, and you're going to help that. If you do, you're going to be subjected to something that and so that was probably the lesson. Ironically enough, one of the comrades from France was treated the worst. It's like, this is the France Africa Summit. It's like, don't let him think his French citizenship is going to give him a pass, And so, but still, no one got killed, no one got shot, and unfortunately, these are the extreme conditions, circumstances that really could have happened. And and so and I'm saying abductions, that might be a little bit, so not just detained because abductions is a little bit something else. These are the masked, unidentified people that take you somewhere and you don't know, what's happening. No one knows what's happened to you, and they're not supposedly official, with any. So that's not what happened. These were people getting basically arrested and detained by the authorities. As far as we knew, that didn't happen. And so that's kind of some highlights. I think uh, I think it was successful in the sense that I think it built some solidarity, international solidarity with the movement in Kenya, and also exposed some of the stuff that was going on, particularly this move with this France. They call it Africa Forward. You know how imperialism tries to put a benevolent face. We trying to help, and paternalistic face. We trying to help Africa, move Africa forward. As if as if they're really not just leeches off of the global South. And so that was exposed, I think. Maybe not as much as could be and should be, but it was definitely exposed better than had nothing ever happened at all, and it was just allowed to take place without any challenge. And as we see now, the movement and the people's movements and the spontaneity of the movement is continuing in Kenya. The U.S. It's not just the France, but the U.S. treats the Ruto government and these comprador governments are really shameless. The comprador government, and I don't mean to preach to y'all, because y'all know, they made they were able to grant the Kenya or the Kenyan government non-NATO ally status. Is that what it's called? Non-major, right, right. And so we know NATO is the war alliance of the West. It's imperialism, And so when you get that designation, that means that they see you as their favorite or their best, most reliable lapdog, And so I know the people can see it as an insult and an offense. We should see it as an offense. I want to end here. I think one of the things I appreciate about this gathering is also and from what I understand reading, is to get us as African people. And I say we're African people, even those who we might be called African Americans and Black Americans in the U.S. We're African people. We were stolen from Africa. We brought here against our will, forced to speak this language, all that kind of stuff. But we also have a movement and a condition that's essentially the same as our people struggling around the world. And so we're Africans. And this gathering is to help us shore up that connection that we have to recapture and we have to build in order to fight this, in order to help us fight this more overarching system of imperialism. So it's imperialism that we're fighting. The same things that plague Africans in Kenya, we're talking about defeating or countering tribalism. And my comrade here was talking about tribalism and how it's in Ethiopia and other places. Tribalism is all over Africa. It's actually even in here. It's a system. I mean, it's a tactic. It's a form of division to dominate people. And that's how we should see it. It might manifest itself differently, be implemented and fostered and instigated differently, but it's essentially the same divide and conquer thing that we have to be able to figure out how to overcome. And while we might have to tweak it in different places because of the material conditions are a little bit different in certain places, but essentially the form of it might be different, but essentially it's the same. It's the same in whether it's in Haiti or Jamaica or Southeast DC or any place else in the world. So Africa and African people must unite and forward to a united Africa, united Kenya, and the defeat of imperialism and neocolonialism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Netfa. We appreciate you being here and always being with us in a lot of our conversations. I'm gonna call Catherine. I met Catherine in Baltimore. She is a poet, and I was very lucky to see her and listen to her poem. And I reached out to her, and I said, "Oh, will you come to our event? You're Kenyan, and I loved your poem." And she was very excited to join us. She's an educator, an entrepreneur, a playwright, and a poet. During the day, she's working in education and running her business, but in the nighttime, she works on her plays, poetry, and stories that refuse to be quiet. She believes that truth is an act of resistance, and art is how she practices it. So, come on.
Thank you so much. So I want to begin by introducing myself in a more deep way. I'm the daughter of Ambrose James Otieno, who just so happens to have been kicked out of Sony Sugar Company. He was the managing director. His case was never heard to the end. So I kind of in an intimate way understand what the Kenyan justice system can do to the name and reputation of somebody. I've been fortunate that I've been here for long enough. And the piece I'm going to be doing for you people today is called Sirkal Saidia. We used to hear women say it all the time on the news, Sirkal Saidia, Sirkal Saidia. But we've gotten to a point where we no longer hear it. I no longer hear expectations of the government to help anybody. So this is Sirkal's idea, a mother's petition in 6 stages. When he was small, Sirkal's idea, he's 3 years old and coughing like the walls are coughing with him. Like the room itself has caught what he has caught, and I have 20 shillings. 20 shillings between me and absolute poverty, which is not enough for the clinic and not enough for the medicine and not enough for the bus fare to take us somewhere that has both. So I boiled water. I boiled it twice. I pressed it to my chest and sang the songs my mother sang to me when the government was also busy, also in meetings and also somewhere entirely different. He got better. No thanks to anybody with a title. I had learned not to be surprised by this. Sirkal's idea. Desperate? Yes, but still polite. We were raised to be polite. When he was going to school, Sirkal's idea. He needs shoes, not the ones in the window, the ones that will survive a term, that will not split at the soul by February and make the other children laugh, the particular laughter children learn from watching adults be cruel. I filed the form, bursary application, free primary, free they said, and then listed the fees. Development levy, activity fee, desk fee. I did not know desk required fees. I thought desks were just desks. I paid what I could. I paid what I couldn't. I borrowed from the rest from a woman who was also borrowing from a woman who was also asking the government for help. He went to school in shoes that lasted until March. He went anyway in March with shoes with personality. He said, Mama, it's fine. He was 7. He was already protecting me from the things I could not fix. Sirkal's idea. When he was becoming something, Sirkal's idea, fees again, always fees. The government's most consistent product, secondary school, uniform, books, examination fees, a laptop that they announced on television that arrived at the school as one laptop for 413 children on a quota. He shared, he waited his turn, he read by torchlight when the electricity ran out, which was often, which was always, which was Tuesday and also Thursday and the whole of last month. But you should have seen him study, like he was settling a debt the country owed him, like the books were the last bus home and he was not going to miss it. He said, Mama, I want to fix things. He said, and I said, fix what? He said, all of it. And I laughed, all of it. This boy, this 20 shilling miracle, this mad shoes child, look at all of it, like it was a reasonable project. I kissed him. I did not tell him how afraid I was. Sirkal's idea. When he took to the streets, Sirkal's idea. He left in the morning with a sign he made himself, cardboard, marker, and his own handwriting. The letters slightly uneven, the way they always were since class 3 because I couldn't afford the tuition fees. He said, Mama, we are going to Parliament. I said, Parliament is not listening. He said, then we will be louder. I packed him chapatis, 2 actually, and a bottle of water, because that's what you do. You feed them, you water them, you send them into the world that has never once been fair to them. And you stand at the door and you watch until you cannot see them anymore. And then you watch the space where they were. I watched the live stream on my phone. I saw the flowers. I saw the thousands. I saw my son in the crowd, a sign raised, young and furious and beautiful. Beautiful in the way that only the righteous are beautiful. In the way that reckless youth is beautiful. In the way that only I could recognize because I made him. And then I saw the police. And then I heard what followed. I called his number. I called it again. And I called it until the automated voice began to feel like a person who also did not know where my child was. Samahani, mteja wa nambari uliopiga hapatikani kwa sasa. When they brought him back wrong, Sirkal's idea, they brought him back to me in a way I did not describe. I will not say he still had the sign. Crumpled, yes. Stained, yes. But still it was him, a patriot silenced, but not entirely. I identified him. I set his name into a void. I signed where they told me to sign. I was very calm. I was calm the way a house is calm after a roof has been taken and there's nothing left for the wind to disturb. I asked, who did this? They said, we cannot confirm. I asked why. They said investigations are ongoing. I asked when. They gave me a number to call. The number rang. The number rang. Sorry, the mobile subscriber cannot be reached. I went home. I sat in the room where he studied by torchlight. I turned the torch on. I left it on all night, just in case. Sirkal's idea. Bring him back. I'm asking correctly. I've always asked correctly. I'm using the right words. I have the form. I signed where you told me. Please, Sirkal, Saidia, please. When I asked for the last thing. Sirkal's idea. I'm not asking for much now. I have learned not to ask for much. I asked for a clinic, I got a levy. I asked for a desk, I got a fee. I asked for a laptop, I got a quota. I asked for my son, I got a form. Font size 11 with a logo. So I'm asking for one last thing. The smallest thing, the most ordinary human, ancient thing that even the poorest country manages to give its mothers. Let me bury him properly. Let me wash him and wrap him and put him into the ground with his name said out loud by people who love him. People who knew that he read by the torchlight and went to school with laughing shoes, with his letters slightly leaning left, that he believed he could make a change like it was a reasonable project, that he left with a sign he made himself and chapatis I packed and water that he never ate but did not return with his body. Let me give him a grave with a stone that says his name, so that when the government is done being in his meetings, done levying and taxing and billing, it will have to walk past its name. Every day, if this country had one drop of shame left, one molecule of the thing it promised at independence, in the anthem, in the constitution we were taught to recite before we were old enough to understand what reciting cost, it will read his name and know what it has done. Sirkal's idea. Please help this mother.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was so beautiful. Everything you shared is beautiful. Thank you. Let's give her another round, please. So up next is our in-house musician that we love to hear every time. GT, do you need a few minutes? Okay, he needs 1 minute, but GT, I asked for his bio. He just said, I'm an artist and producer. So we'll give him a few minutes, maybe one, and then we'll get to the meat of our conversation today, led by the revolutionary beret-wearing Valentine. Okay, we'll give a 1 minute intermission just for GT to get ready, but then we get started with our conversation. Ali, our in-house journalist, do you want to say something?
I think the artist is ready. Oh, not yet? Okay, there we go. All right.
Hey everyone, I go by GT. My stage name is Gold Trigger. I've been doing music for a minute now. I'm actually learning production at this stage of my music part-time gig career. And I wrote a song like maybe about a year ago, like in May when when the protests started coming up again and things just went from bad to worse. So I felt like somebody needed to compose something to give the people hope to, and because I also felt an air of despair going on around the country, around the people and everything. So I just felt like I needed to put this song together and put it out there. Hope you enjoy. All right. One time for the brothers and sisters lost in resistance, fighting the system. Two time for the mothers, I miss them. Jah is my witness, comfort to give them. Smack him with a shoe, Mr. One Time. He be getting hunted by the phantom. Time is of the essence like a one time. Impeach him. He's a one time. Congratulations if you voted in the president. I'm fascinated by his gift of speaking with the dead. I wonder why he's wanted dead by many fellow men. Tell Kebaso stay away, I am not his friend. Took advantage of the movement, I can tell that he rehearses lines. And if you did send him money, they just know you fell for lies. Am I wrong if I say that someone deserves to be crucified like Jesus Christ or Simon Peter? These are ones that say the ultimate sacrifice, and the current date in mind is June 25. Glad to still be alive, but it's sad to see the repercussions and abductions. One time for the brothers and sisters lost in resistance, fighting the system. Two time for the mothers, I miss them. Jah is my witness, comfort to give them. Smack him with a shoe, Mr. One Time. He be getting hunted by the phantom. Time is of the essence like a one time. Impeach him, he's a one time. Get rid of your line, throw it away. They live by fear, but we live by faith. We'll win this war sometime, someday. Somehow, someway, we'll find a way. Kwani iko nini? Weza kayo shuka chini, kisogo ya kasongo inahitaji mangumi. Uliza kiatu, wachana na kina boni. Usaliti, ufisadi, ubaguzi hamchoki. Vasco danganya ametuzowea sana, ati tupunguze gharama ya hapana. Stori za jaba usiku hadi mchana, tuko na sababu ya kuwapea lawama. Vasco danganya ametuzowea sana, basi tupunguze gharama ya hapana. Stori za jaba usiku hadi mchana, tuko na sababu ya kuwapea lawama. One time for the brothers and sisters lost in resistance, fighting the system. Two time for the mothers, I miss them. Jah is my witness, comfort he give them. Smack him with a shoe, Mr. One Time. He be getting hunted by the phantom. Time is of the essence like a one time. Impeach him, he's a one time criminal. Calling us criminal. He's losing track of all lies. These times biblical, the war spiritual. You better realize why we say that he's a criminal. Calling us criminals. He's losing track of all lies. The times biblical, the war spiritual. You better realize why we say that he's a one time for the brothers and sisters lost in resistance, fighting the system. Two time for the mothers, I miss them. Jah is my witness, comfort to give them. Smack him with a shoe, Mr. One Time. He be getting hunted by the phantom. Time is of the essence like a one time. Impeach him, he's a one time. Thank you.
Backbenchers, Soy, kuja ukae hapa mbele. Soy, you're Masi amae. Niko na kiti iko na jina yako hapa. Evans anauza t-shirt huko nyuma. All right. Let's get to the meat of our congregation today. Val is gonna guide us through a few points of conversation. This is not a lecture. We really want to hear where everybody is. Unpolished. You know, when we started coming to Sankofa, we're still very unpolished, but more so back in the day. We had no idea what we were saying. But that's how you learn, and that's how you get more and more understanding. So we encourage everybody to speak, contribute. and be part of this conversation. So, Val.
Thank you, Joy. That performance with GT and the poet, really amazing. Sidrika, I don't know if GT will do at the end of the night, if we still have time, maybe another performance, and the poet if you want to. But if you know I cannot see your face, just come and sit. This discussion won't start until these chairs are occupied. The reason being is these chairs have worksheets on them. So backbenchers, mnajijua, don't make me call you twice. Masi Amai. The only person who should be there is our T-show guy, Evans. Good, yes. You know, Soy, we need your energy. This is your forte, but yes. So I'm really hoping that tonight we really get something out of this, right? Personal promises, things you will do, things you'll leave out of here knowing that you're gonna think about, right? And I'm really hoping that this would be the beginning of many conversations, but with something that follows up with action. And this is an open forum. There is no right or wrong answer. I will be doing less talking and all of you will be doing more of the talking. I know not everyone here is Kenyan, but we want you here because those who are not Kenyans will give us fresh perspectives, different ideas, or the way they observe things will be very different. On to our first discussion. So June of 2024 and June of 2025, we've seen massive protests in Kenya. What do you think have been the successes and the failures of the protests 2 years ago?
Hi, I'm Catherine again. So I think the success of the protests was bringing awareness to more people. I think one of the more impactful things about the protest was the breaking down of the finance bill to the ordinary person. These are things that I don't think the regular Mama Mboga would have known if they were told that it's great, then I guess it is. Sikuenda shule. So, I trust that the person I voted in has my best interest at heart. And I was having a discussion with my aunt who's still in Kenya, and she, uneducated, has a class 3 education, and she farmed all her life, and she would tell me like, huyu mtu alikuja akatupatia leso, so tulidhani atatusaidia, but the reality of the finance bill and the expectations that the people were to expect coming from this finance bill, that education is definitely very important, and the awareness to the people. I think, without a doubt, the failure would be the loss of lives. We have lost, even one life is more than enough. I think the loss of that youth, the loss of vigor, like a future. These are people who, might not have even wanted to be in the political space, but because of the sad realities of our country, they put their faith in the fairness of the government, but got back cruelty in its worst form. And to have people in high places say that I don't have any blood on my hands, while we have 65 bodies coming back in a place, to families, bodies coming back in place of sons, daughters, and husbands, wives, I think is the biggest failure of our protest. But the knowledge and the vigor that it has given the youth is the best part of it all.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. Oh, how many? We have? Does anyone also? I'm gonna ask the question again. What have been the successes and failures of the protests 2 years ago?
Okay, I'm going to say something. My my name's Ali Badawi. Been out here in the DMV more than 23 years, and sometimes people call me a journalist. I do not regard myself as a journalist, but we've been covering this issue for a very long time. From before it happened to when it happened. When we talk about successes and failures, I think we need to look at it in terms of what it is that maybe could have been done within that period when everybody's attention was there, and what has happened right now. The success, of course, was beyond people, just knowing about the finance bill. There's a whole generation that became conscious, that was not keen on politics, that became conscious. And each generation in Kenya, for those of you who are familiar with Kenya, there were moments when a particular generation was hit and knew that, we have to be conscious of politics. There was a generation that was hit by Saba Saba, in the late 80s, early 90s. Then there was a generation that was hit now by the push to oust Moi and the new constitution. And then there's a generation that now came after June 25th, not forgetting the independence generation too. So, I think to me, the biggest success is getting people conscious. But now the question is, what have we done with that consciousness? Because it's very important to analyze outcomes and assess, what benefit has come out of a very tragic situation that happened, where we had multiple people killed. When it happened in 2024, in 2025, the abductions and everything else. I think, to me, in this age of social media and artificial intelligence, there's an art of protesting that has been lost because of the ease of organizing and because of the ease of someone can show up, take a picture, and say, I was there. Those of us who were, we were very young but conscious enough to when protests were happening in the 90s, things were very, very specific in what was happening before the protest, what happens during the protest, and what follows up. So, for example, the protests that we had out here, that we led out here in the DMV, we had people's attention, but when we question, what is it that has come out of those protests? Because for those of you who follow Kenyan news know that the tribal narrative now is back, now that election is coming up in 2027. So I think one very important thing is to try to figure out, whenever we are protesting, why exactly are we doing it? And is there any legal stuff that we've done prior to the protest that maybe will force the government to respond, that we can follow up with after the protest and tell the people who came to the protest, yes, we protested, but this is what we've done. We have a lawsuit. We've sent this message to this ministry. They're legally compelled to give us an answer, and if they don't, we can sue them. So I think that's missing, because we show up in protests, people protest, they feel good about it, and then they go home, and then the bad guys regroup, and they start, doing what they do best. And very important, most people who are in this room are already conscious. It's very important to be conscious about people who are not aware of political happenings, and be very sensitive to them, and don't talk to them in a way that makes them feel like you guys don't know what you're doing. You need to come, you need to follow us and listen to us. The current state, unfortunately, and I think it's all over the world, not only in Kenya, is that people are mostly informed by screenshots, short messages. The art of sitting down and reading a book, reading long articles, thinking deeply about what's happening, is completely lost. So when you're talking to people and giving them all this depth, and where they are is on the shallow end, there's no connection that's being made. If we go back and look at like some of the best orators in history, people like Malcolm X, they are very good at talking to regular people who are disconnected in speaking to their hearts. So I think that's one of the skills that has been lost when it comes to protests. And even us, those who are organizing, we are not conscious of the middle 90% that may not necessarily be aware of the little things that are happening and this that's happening. So I think that's important to me when I look at what hasn't worked so well but can work better in future, is get to the current state of mind of our people and start from there. Start from where the people are, and not from where you want them to be. Start from where they are. If they're here where they're not conscious, they don't know that the government has been like secretly selling paracetamols. Our poet talked about the dad being I think the CEO, the chairman of a parastatal, which are state-owned enterprises, and the government has secretly been selling them as they throw stuff to entertain you in the news. Secretly, they are selling these entities to foreign individuals who most people don't know about. And I think even when we talk about the finance bill, because the finance bill has become very popular in Kenyan lingo, but you have to go to the beginning. You have to go to the equivalent. I can't remember what it's called. It's the equivalent of what's an appropriations bill. Because by the time the finance bill is being presented, when you think, and maybe this is not a good analogy, but when you think of someone who is sick and is going to the hospital, the doctor can do something to take care of them. But when you think of a dead body, when it's a finance bill, that's a dead body. A dead body, the best thing that you can do to it, you can take it to someone who does embalming, maybe give it a fresh suit, make it look nice, but it's a dead body. So by the time the finance bill is going to reading, that is a dead body. You have to go to the beginning, which sometimes happens a couple of months before, and that's where changes can be made. By the time it's down into a bill, it's a dead body waiting to be embalmed and to be buried. And by that time, yes, it's good to protest for the consciousness, but it becomes difficult to effect the change that we're looking for. Thank you so much. Val.
Thank you, Ali. Do you think the whole leaderless, fearless, tribeless, or just within the protest not having a leader kind of dismantled the whole movement? And what makes a movement or a revolution like Nepal different from what we have? Because Nepal succeeded, right? And they were able to get someone else to occupy that position, but we failed like 2 times.
So okay, the leaderless philosophy works well in the short term, but I guess people got so obsessed by it and forgot that at the end of the day, movements like this will always need direction. My theory of what happened, and this is just a theory, it's not a point of fact. The people who were actually pushing buttons and making things happen during those protests are mostly the ones who got abducted. These are the people who are not popular. They were not on TV, but they were down on the ground making things happen and moving things. They're the ones who got abducted. Some of them got killed, and some of them just got completely disappeared, not knowing where they went. So there were some personalities that were propped up by the media. And as time has gone by, you've seen a couple of them, have been bought by 2 silver coins and a bag of millet, and they agreed to it. And I guess when at a certain point, it is important to determine what the goals are, what the direction is. And maybe the term leader may not be popular, but when we look at, like movements that have been successful, there was always a leader. So I think it's important to bear that in mind. And I think also another thing, the sectarianism of generations also, like kind of worked against us, because there was a point when the whole country was looking and saying, okay, I think the Gen Z are gonna bring about this change. So what ended up happening is that the bad guys regrouped, because the bad guys have experience. And I think the lack of experience made it very easy to divide the group and get us to where we are currently. However, many good things happened from when the revolt happened to today. And Kenya is essentially not the same country. However, we have to ask ourselves, what tangible outcomes would the middle 90%? By the middle 90%, I'm talking about the regular people who are just trying to make a living. What can they say they have been able to benefit out of this? Of course, there's been some benefits, but the reality is, if you talk to that middle 90%, most of them feel like things have reverted to being the same again. And the question is, how can we communicate to that middle 90% that there's been change that has happened in a way that they can resonate with? And what is it that we can do to motivate them to still want to be part of this movement?
Thank you so much. So we might need an extra mic if we have one. There is pass the mic over to.
So I agree with everything you've said, but I think in the matter of the political landscape, I'm going to use kind of like a judicial kind of analogy. The burden of proof is always on the prosecution. So we have people who are already in power who said, bottom down, Sisi ni hasla, I know what you're talking about. I understand what you're doing. And it also feeds into what you said as well, where we do not know, people who know lack empathy for people who don't know. It's inherent in us. Like, I expect every adult that I meet, if I tell them 10 plus 10 is 20, therefore 20 minus 10, I expect you to tell me it's 10. But there are people who don't have that knowledge. And in having the knowledge that we have to be able to give it to the people who don't, because to them, the people in power are telling the truth. This guy knows what I'm talking about. And we're here like, no, actually, the finance bill says XYZ and this section says da-da-da-da. No. What I heard from him is that mboga itakuwa 30 bob, ugali nitaweza kukula every single day, mkate ni super loaf pekee. Like, life is going to be easy because this guy understands what I'm going through. And here I come with my poetry and my big words and my belief that actually you don't know. And, some of them understandably feel like when we speak to them, we're talking down to them. So the burden of proof is on us because we have to prove that our point is valid, the other guy is lying, and that when we get this position, that if my thing goes through, you're also going to benefit. All our communication should be at a 3rd grade level. Like, yes, let's simplify it all the way. Like, let's also have our little slogans. Bottom down, what is ours? Top, bottom, something. Let's have something that the common mwananchi can grasp onto and understand that huyu mtoto ako na degree but tunaelewana. Because the other guy, as you said, the bad guys are experienced. Yeah, huyu ni mwizi amezoea kuiba. Yeah, huyu ni mwizi amezoea kuiba, huyu ni con man, amezoea kukon kila mtu. He's been conning people since 19 before some of us were even born. So so this is someone who has the systems on his side. He has the we are going uphill, he's downstream. So I think as a movement, we need to have just communication that's more clear, that is more accessible to the common wananchi. The other thing about leadership is, I think, the idea that young people cannot lead. It's something that we subconsciously see. Like, I think we know that we can have a 35-year-old president, but if you think about it, like, how many times have you seen a 35-year-old person in the political landscape and you're like, that could be president? There's a subconsciousness within us that has been taught that age gives wisdom, wisdom gives leadership, leadership has to go to the old, and the young have to kind of like be groomed by the older ones. We see it with, like, let's take for example like ODM right now. Like, they had the leadership of Baba for such a long time, good or bad, but he did not groom anybody under him, and now it's kind of just like helter skelter. And this is now a young movement led by young people who have youthful ways of communication because they never knew how to do it any other way, and now they're grappling with the idea of leadership. And I think there needs to be a bridging between the generations in order to get sufficient leadership for the movement.
Hi. Oh, golly. I'm Yvonne. I live in the DMV. I think one of the successes, or one of the things that was really encouraging at the time, was that people really did what they could with what they had in that time. So if you remember, there was a lot of music. GT is a musician. There was a lot of music. I have a playlist called Mandamano Bops because there was so much music at that time. Artists did what they could. Social media people did what they could. We had, I forget his name, Zaya, he changed his name, but Mike Moshiri had translated the finance bill, and then they were using, Instagram and TikTok. There was a lot of organizing via Twitter. It was like people just did what they could. And then the Law Society, they are lawyers, so they come out and do what they can do. And it was kind of like everybody was thinking, what is my sphere of influence? How do I contribute to this movement? If I can make the signs, like if I can give people water. We saw that a lot. There was a lot of solidarity across fields, industries, professions. And so I really think that's an important model for us to know that whatever field or profession we might occupy, I'm an urban planner, so I was really encouraged to see people occupy the streets of the city, take back ownership of the center of the city, and yeah, just kind of like think about what we can do in our own spheres. Was it a failure? Failure is such a funny word. But obviously there was just a realization that power is tenuous, very tenuous. And so there was kind of like that overreaction from the administration. And during that time, immediately with the killings and abductions, and then following, I forgot to mention the tech people too, because now you can comment on the finance bill just by choosing boom, you submitted your comments. So tech people really came out. Anyway, I don't want us, okay, maybe I'm talking from a point of being a little bit apart from the action and from the direct loss. But I don't want us to be discouraged, because this is long range work. This is work that will always take a really long time. If you think about people protesting for a new constitution, and when we actually got a new constitution, it was at least 2 decades, but probably more. And it probably started really small. There was those meetings in people's houses. So I think maybe that's part of what's missing, is like the little like cell groups, the little like relationships between people is how we're going to keep maybe make the movement into something real. But again, our own spheres of influence.
I'd love to jump in here as well. Just build off the conversation we were having earlier, Ali. I think our comrade here made a great point that change is not instant, it takes time. And part of our earlier conversation was about the Sabasaba protests a generation ago. In 1991, when they started agitating for repeal of multi-party rule, single party rule, those protests began in 1991. Single party rule was repealed in 1992. But the president that these people are organizing against, Daniel Moi, still won 2 more terms after that, 1992 and 1997. It wasn't until 2002 that he was even replaced by another government. So we don't measure the success or failures of Sabasaba by the 1992 election or by the 1997 election. We have to recognize that change takes time and it takes organizational structure. And I think there's this impatience because we're staring down an election that now there's many in the political class who are so keen to tell young people, look, you guys don't know what you're doing. You've not even produced a political party. You've not produced a political candidate. When I'm convinced that these are solutions, first of all, to a problem that is 50 years in the making, and two, there has to be underlying work to build an organization based on something beyond expedience towards an election. That's how political parties have worked. They are made for an election, and after that election is won or lost, the party disappears or it's cannibalized. Look at ODM now, it's disappearing into UDA. There's no party anymore. So I think the work for people like us is to figure out what has gone wrong with these earlier movements. How do we do something different and something that is better than that? And our insistence has been that you have to have a deeper agenda, a deeper ideology, a deeper motivation, and that is how you create something that can't be bought by a brown envelope. That is how you create something that can't be killed on the other side of a government rifle. That is how you create something that is going to effect lasting change. That has to be the starting point for us. In the meantime, Gen Z cannot be scapegoated for the failure to produce a political equation that's going to replace one president. I actually think our concern has to be deeper, not just replacing Ruto, but replacing the system that produces a Ruto after a Ruto after a Ruto. We have to really do a deeper interrogation of how did we get here? What system, why is it that no matter who we elect, no matter how good their intentions may or may not be, we end up right back at the same place? And that requires a broader organization. It requires building something that people believe in beyond one election. And that's where I think 625 is trying to begin that conversation. It's what do we do so that we don't end up in the same position as every other movement that we've seen eliminated by the government of the day.
Yes, thank you for that. That makes me remember we have a very big monster that until we address this monster called tribalism, then I think we can start figuring out or getting to those boxes. So in 1966, there was a split between Jomo Kenyatta and Oginga Odinga. And it was very messy. One time Kenyatta went to Nyanza and he was egged and he didn't like that. So he had the people in Nyanza being massacred, leading to a rift between the Kikuyu tribe and the Luo tribe, which still echoes suspicion today. And in 2007, we saw the same scenario, right? Ending up with the Kikuyus and I'll say the tribe called the Kalenjin and that tension. And currently, we're still having politicians like Rigathi Gachagua and many others who are, not just him, there are many others, if you know the names, you can mention them, who are using tribalism to leverage their political career. We could see the president, Ruto, and Rigathi Gachagua, who fell, who are no longer working together, who are nemesises, and now they're bringing in the whole country, they're bringing in the tribes into this when it's none of our business, right? Allegedly, the reason that they split is one person wanted, allegedly, Rigathi Gachagua wanted money for all the votes that he brought from central Kenya. And they couldn't agree on the amount. And because of that, they split. And now we're seeing 2027 coming, elections coming next year. And when you look at the diaspora, we've had a couple of candidates who've come here and they've mobilized as well in a tribal way. Not just Rigathi Gachagua, we've seen Matiang'i a little bit here and there, and we've seen Kalonzo Musyoka. And that makes me wonder, because when the Gen Z protest, I know Haile doesn't like when we say the Gen Z protest, maybe we should say the youth protest. When the youth protest started, we said we were tribeless. And now we are back into those tribal cocoons. And I don't think many people realize it, but we are. So looking at 2007, 2017, and 2022, what patterns do you see in how tribal identity gets switched on here, especially here in the diaspora, not just in Kenya? And as elections approach, what do you think are the actual incentives driving both the people doing mobilizing and responding to it?
Okay, let me say something real quick in addition to that, Val. In my 23 years in the diaspora, I have the privilege of being a Kenyan, not from any of the major, political tribal groupings. So people feel comfortable telling me the bad things about the other people. So I have that privilege of, listening to it from this side and listening to it from the other side. And my analysis of it here in the diaspora and even back home, the reason why people resort to this tribal voting pattern, because we saw that, with this tribalist movement with the youth, it was said that this is the generation that will come and end tribalism. When us guys were that age, they said the same thing about us, but it did not happen. When us millennials, when we were there, they said these are the ones who will change. It did not happen. And we are seeing a pattern also of now, now the Gen Z also moving towards that direction. And I'm saying this not based on just saying it, based on elections that are happening on college campuses in Kenya. If any of you is following elections in college campuses in Kenya, if you don't belong to this group or you don't belong to that group, you're not going to get voted in. And if you don't mobilize tribal, it's happening in college campuses. So that's telling you that that's a direction that also the youth are now heading. When we had, our show last night, I had a show with Luca and Joy last night, and we were discussing this. And I was telling people, in the spirit of the World Cup, people are watching soccer right now, a lot of soccer. So thank you so much for those who came in and skipped, watching the soccer games. But for any of you who's played soccer, you will understand that, when you watch the different countries play, Brazil, for example, kids are nurtured into an offensive ideology, whereby even if you're playing as a defender, you need to know how to attack and go score goals. In Italy is not in the World Cup. They have a defensive mindset with the game. So even if you're like a striker, you have to learn how to fall back, and that's a philosophy. So in Kenya, when it comes to politics, because this is what people have seen from when they were kids, like this is the angle they have for decisions, you know, like when they're faced by a decision, who do I select? This is what they've seen, this is what they've known. And because people lack that depth of, you know, like looking into issues, so whenever they're faced by this decision, they resort back to that. And some of these people are not even tribal, you know, like inherently, meaning like when, you know, in Kenya, for those who are not Kenya here, certain professions are known to be, you know, like, to go to certain people. Like, for example, barbers. They are Kamba known to be very good barbers. So when someone wants a good haircut, they're not going to ask, you know, like, this, he's not from my tribe, so I cannot go get my hair cut there. So it is only when it comes to politics is when people now start thinking in a tribal angle. And this is from, you know, Mama Mboga on the street to a professor. You know, like it's almost everyone. And I'm going to say something that is going to be very uncomfortable. There's three major, you know, like tribal groupings in Kenya that have made this, you know, like, they've made this, you know, like become something that happens every election. And if the change comes from there, I can assure you, you know, like everyone else in Kenya is gonna follow suit. You know, I mean, for the sake of, you know, unity, I don't wanna mention them, but I think maybe I'm gonna say three up to, actually the major ones are three. There's three particular groupings where they've been conditioned to vote in this particular pattern. Because when you look at voting patterns in Kenya, when you go to, for example, what's generally considered the fourth largest tribe, which is, I believe it's the Luya. I don't know. There might be number 4, number 5. You do not necessarily see that pattern, you know, because for me, I have a definition, you know, like any grouping where more than 70% of the population votes in one direction, then that's my own definition, then that is a tribally mobilized voting bloc. And I think once the monopoly of these voting blocks can be taken care of from the top, because one problem we have in Kenya is something that I call an all-abovism, whereby we do not like pointing the problem. We'll come and say, all Kenyans are corrupt. No, not all Kenyans are corrupt. Or we'll say something like, all Kenyans are thieves, you know, inherently. We have to be comfortable to point where the problem is and attack it from that angle, because that's how we're going to find a solution. And one thing, you know, that I'm going to look at slightly differently before we give someone else a chance to talk about is when we're looking to flip a system upside down, it's important also to try to consider, you know, like, rather than look at things from what did not work from the previous groups that came in, is also what are the few things that worked that we can amplify so that we can take some steps. This may be a long process, 10, 15 years, but what can we give people, you know, like 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line? Luca talked about Sabasaba. When Sabasaba was happening in July of 1990, by 1991, when Section 2A was being repealed, allowing multi-party in Kenya, that was already a success within a year, or within a year, couple of months of when that happened. In 1992, yes, Moi rigged an election and won, but when you look at the results, he won by 30%. At that time, we did not have the 50% plus one. So this movement had already produced members of parliament, it produced councillors, it produced people who were able to take more steps. There was a thing called the Ufuga Initiative that followed, that allowed for minimum reforms, that paved way for the election of Kibaki. And remember, when Kibaki was elected, he wasn't a saint. We need to stop this thing of looking for saints. Kibaki was not a saint. Kibaki was Moi's vice president for a very long time. He was Kenyatta's finance minister. He was actually one of the last people, like when people in Sabasaba, he was one of the last people to show up, now like when the election date was announced, he was one of the last people who showed up. So as we look towards next year, and I know we are saying, we do not necessarily want to look at this by-election cycle, but I think because this is something that's on top of people's minds, it is very important for the 625 movement, especially if they want to resonate with the rest of the Kenyans, to give direction, on what's going to happen next year, without fear of being labeled or branded. Because if you want to take leadership, you have to be comfortable of making decisions that will sometimes be good and will sometimes be bad. The worst form of leadership is a leadership that has indecision. You're better off making a bad decision and then learning from that bad decision and making a better one than just moving along and waiting to see what will happen. Val, back to you.
Thank you. Before we move on, for those who just came in, and if you want to, we have like 3, 4, 5 seats, and the seats have worksheets as well. Totally up to you, but it would be nice to have these seats occupied. So we'll do Luca, and then we'll do Yvonne, and then because we started late, we started around 6:40, so we will end at 8:30, 8:40. To you, Luca, then Yvonne.
A couple quick points. Number one, we absolutely believe in harm reduction. We believe that, yes, we want to support regimes that may not necessarily look like exactly what we want, but are going to maybe put us closer on the path towards what we are looking for overall. Number two, I want to push back against the point that, the movement has not produced anything so far. And this is part of the conversation that we had earlier. When the IMF came to the Kenyan government and told them, we need you to produce $2.7 billion worth of revenue so that we can give you $1 billion worth of loans. Because we are a country, like many others in the global south, addicted to foreign loans. That was what motivated the government to write the finance bill and to tax everything that Kenyans' livelihoods depended on, sanitary pads, oil, everything they could to induce that level of revenue so that that level of loans could be released to them. In the year after that, the other half of that $1 billion was never disbursed to the Kenyan government. And the IMF's organizing structure changed. It was not a clean success, but they looked at this and said, there's a problem here. At the very least, cosmetically, we need to include anti-corruption measures, social impact as part of the package of whatever we're asking our government to do in exchange for these loans. And I think that's a reflection, that's a mirror, that's an analogy, that's a parallel to what happened with Sabasaba, because pressure on the international community was what led to that repeal of Section 2A. Once again, because we are a country addicted to loans, the reason Moi repealed Section 2A was partly because of what was happening domestically, but also partly because of the IMF's approach had changed. They said, now we want to see democratic reforms, even if they're just cosmetic, as part of the package of what you're putting forward. So there has been accomplishments, there has been gains. At least we forced them to reconsider the way they approach these issues. But number three, I would also say this, the tribalism question that you raised. Tribalism is a software that's been installed in us since colonialism, 50 years in the making, To uninstall that software is not going to happen overnight. And the larger point that we're trying to make is you cannot replace that software with something else. You have to replace it with a different kind of organizing logic. That's where we are talking about an agenda. That's where we're talking about ideology. That's where we're talking about conversations that motivated our founding fathers but have lost their way since these governments have repressed and scattered these movements in the time since. You have to replace the organizing logic altogether. And can people recognize that ODM, UDA, whatever, this is all one political class. And by political class, I don't just mean the politicians. I mean everybody who benefits from that system, everyone who benefits from a tender or something like that. And us on the other side, if you don't, you are part of the working class, and you will not benefit if we just replace one with the other. We have to replace that system with totality. Last point I'll make very quickly is this. I always feel like there's this temptation to assume that there's certain people who don't understand these types of conversations. The people, Kenyans are very tuned in, very savvy, much more so than what I've encountered in the politics here, where they're watching what's happening very closely. They don't resort to tribalism because they can't understand a conversation about an agenda, about ideology, about any of these things. They resort to it because we've not produced an organizational structure that can counter that. And the work of that is one election. That's the reality. Fasten your seatbelts. It will take time. And we have to be ready to invest that time if we're going to have luck, not just replacing this with something else, but replacing it with a system that changes it altogether.
Yes, before we give the mic to Yvonne, I see some members, I believe they're from the Black Alliance of Peace. Thank you so much for coming. We're looking forward to your contribution, especially when it comes to this part of tribalism and how colonialism has played into tribalism. And also, do you think it is possible for Africans or for the Pan-African community, or even just Kenyans, to organize outside of tribalism? And to the question that Luca is asking, organize more in terms of ideology, policy, and outside of the structure that we have. Do you think it's possible? And if you do think it's possible, how do we do it? What does it look like in practice beyond just talking about it? To you, Yvonne.
Thank you. I agree with Luca. We need some other kind of organizing. We need another catalyst for organizing. I was going to say that part of what makes tribalism so effective is because it feels like there's an existential threat to people. It's like you will die, like literally. Like this is what they're tapping into with the tribalism. Like if you people don't vote for this, you in the majority tribe already, but if you don't vote for your person, like literally your livelihood and lives are threatened. So I think that goes, now you and your beautiful ideologies, that's nice, but you're talking about my life and my ability to provide for my family. Like that is very effective. So I think that I don't know what could tap into the same thing, not from a place of fear, but just from a place of, not to sound trite, but love. Love for your family. Like, what can I do out of love for my family? What can I do out of love for my community? And not just fear for the position that I hold, but also fear for my life. I think that it's just that the system that we live in has also kept people very, very just barely surviving. And so I think I was at church the other day when somebody said that poverty is about a lack of choice. It's just not having any choices before you, and you cannot see past just this moment. You have to just live for right this second. So it's lovely. Like, we are very privileged to be able to think about a 20-year time horizon, but that's not the reality for most of the people that we claim to be representing. So
Thank you, Yvonne.
So I agree with everything she said. The Mama Mboga down the street is being told during this election, if you vote for that other tribe, you're actually going to lose everything that you have. Right now, you're living in poverty, but at least you can have one meal a day. But if the other guy comes in, you're going to lose that. So it becomes a case of either keeping the status quo or losing everything. The idea of change is not positive change in their minds. It's change towards the negative. These people are going to come here and they're going to take everything that I have. Right now, I can provide one meal, but if they get in, I don't even know if that is going to happen. The other thing that we have to realize in the subject of colonial rule and how it contributed to how the tribal landscape is in Kenya currently. In high school history, we were taught collaborators and those who resisted. Unfortunately, those wounds that started way back when have festered. Wounds that have resulted in, let's say, for example, why the police skew towards one tribe, or why certain tribes are able to get scholarships right after colonial rule, or why certain ministries are populated by certain tribes. These are wounds that have festered and have gotten to a point where in our current position, we can't even really say what caused it. We're seeing a symptom of a really deep, dark disease, and we're trying to heal the disease while treating the symptoms. We can no longer even we can't do anything about the colonial rule. But I think one thing we need to begin with is in the education that we give. A lot of people, like, I used to find this very bizarre, and if you remember this, I'm sure you do, but every time we learned about African resistance, there was always a portion of it where you're told, this is how they failed, this is why they failed, this is why it wasn't good. There's a portion of our education that teaches us that the way to change things in an African way always has a drawback. It happened with education on the Pan-African movement. We are told why, Du Bois was wrong in what he did, why all the other Pan-African movements did not succeed. And we don't, at least to my knowledge, I can't remember being taught the great successes, the little steps that they made to move the needle forward. So I think it begins in our education. It begins in everyday conversations where the idea that I just want a certain tribe to do this for me or that for me should be questioned on a personal level, in our group settings, small groups, and also in how we educate people in general. We need to understand that, yes, this is a problem, but no, the person who is uneducated, unknowing, is not malicious in their beliefs, because this is just a symptom of the disease and they're not the disease.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And it is quite astonishing how this system goes down across generations, like from people who actually lived within tribal settings, like from the great grandparents to the newer generations. But I think it's important for people to understand that this has not always been the ideology. When you look at the late Jaramogi, Val talked about the schism that was there in 1966. When he was vying for president in 1992 against Moi, his formation was very diverse. And I think this is something that's not talked about. His formation was very diverse. Like Jaramogi, of course, is Luo. In his formation, he picked, like the likes of Paul Muite, who's a Kikuyu. There was Farama Ali, who was in that formation, who's a Somali. There was Gitobu Imanyara in that formation, who is a Meru. And they were able to produce leaders in those zones. So this is where I say, because of where we are, we like looking back and maybe saying, whatever has been done before has not worked. But there are so many things that actually did work. There are so many things that did work that I think all of us, we are not taking time and we're looking at things from an all the above perspective. There was a total failure by these guys who came before. So there was a lot of success in within certain movements at that particular time, whereby they were able to cross and they were able to sell an idea to people that people resonated with and people were able to vote for them. The one thing that I will always keep saying, that no matter what we try and do, let us remember, when it comes to the politics of the day, and by the politics of the day, I mean political parties. Political parties are being funded by taxpayers' money. And I know political parties is something that maybe people don't like hearing about, but they're being funded by taxpayers' money. So whether you like it or not, the taxes that are being paid are going to fund these people. So if we want to fight them, we have to look at different strategies. There's a strategy of building an ideology from ground up, but there's also the strategy of, which was suggested on the show last night by someone, that maybe the younger people also need to infiltrate all these parties across the board and take them over and reform them from within, like what Luca was saying yesterday, the Democratic Socialists did. They didn't go form their own party. They stayed within the Democratic Party, but they were able to build a movement within there, infiltrate and produce candidates who've won elections, who are changing, how legislation is being thought about, especially when it comes for the working class. So I think it's very important. And then another very important thing, in Kenya, we like agendas. We talk about agendas. Let's look at what someone will do. What do you promise? What will you give us? But we do not do a very good job in looking back. Yes, this guy is promising this, but what's his background? We had, very good rap music from GT earlier on today. So if for the next event, Ali, promise, I am gonna, drop bars like a problem. You guys should select me. I'm gonna drop bars here. You guys are just gonna be left wondering what happened. But then, before you give me that role, nobody's asking, has anyone ever had Ali, dropping bars or trying to rap? Then when I'm given the mic, I fall apart like I'm Alinza the cat in Chinua Achebe's book. So that's what we need to do. We need to start looking back. All these people who are telling us that I'm gonna do this, tutatenga, tutafanya, all these promises that are being made, the question that should be asked is, what is the background of this person? He's saying he's gonna fight corruption. We have his background. We know he's been a corrupt person from when he got his ID, when he turned 18 in the early 90s. We know he's been a corrupt person. So what is it that makes you think that he will come and fight corruption? Because when you look at Kenyan voting patterns, and I'm sorry to bring this up, the people who voted for Ruto are now the ones who are so angry at the people who are supporting Ruto. And this is just, we're talking 2022 was, how long ago was that? That was just 3-4 years ago. So the people who supported Ruto, knowing his background, because his background has been known, they are now very angry at the other group now that is supporting him, and they've quickly forgotten that they drowned us with hustler narratives, you know, with how things are going to change. So that's why there has to be empathy. Even for those people now who are supporting an oppressive regime, when you approach them, you have to approach them with empathy, because you have to remember that you are exactly where they were 4 years ago. So you have to approach them with empathy so that we can work together for a better Kenya. Val.
Believe Netfa wanted the mic.
Thank you. Just a couple of things, I think. Some things that have been said made me think of, I can't claim it, so it's Kwame Ture that I first heard it from. And he said, and I don't know where he heard it from. He said, when we're assessing our problem, any analysis that leaves out the role of the enemy will always end up blaming the people for their own. And so we always have to assess who are the ultimate beneficiaries of our oppression, and how do they operate? You know, when we talk about, people will say some things that we didn't, what has done in the past hasn't been successful. The only way we can measure that is that we got to have a measure of success. What does success mean for us? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish? What constitutes liberation, freedom? Specifically, what kind of conditions must exist on the ground in terms of distribution of resource, wealth, land, all that kind of stuff, the ability for people to exercise certain political rights or have certain things at their disposal. Elections, at the end of the day, when they are in the hands of a process of a status quo, it's designed to uphold the status quo. And so one of the things that we might behoove us to think about, and I think for all oppressed people, is a people's platform. We got to have our own platform, and then popularize, even if we're not running anybody. And then actually, if you do, you can even run somebody, right? But if you have your own platform and it's popularized, then the people, anyone who comes to present themselves as a candidate has to live up to that. And as opposed to them presenting to us or to the people, well, this is what I'm going to do, a bunch of promises that they may or may not live up to, and also will invariably never constitute complete, liberation for the people. I mean, the electoral processes, it doesn't matter where it is, whether it's in Kenya, United States, or anything, as long as it's in a process that's in the hands of, in terms of it's facilitated by the status quo, it's meant to give us the choices that we're supposed to, just give us choices. Here, vote for that. This is who we have, who the people we have. In fact, they're also always about representative democracy. People that you elect to trust to implement policies or do, perform political things that are supposedly in their best interest. And we're dissuaded from thinking of democracy any other kind of way. That, in other words, why can't people vote for policy? Why? And then also not just vote for policy, but what constitutes, what else, other things are really democracy? People coming together, the implementation of things, actually, of decisions that are made by a collective. That's democracy. Democracy at the end is supposed to be about power, the people exercising power. And so that's basically what I'm thinking, that should be part of any conversation about of an oppressed people that has been trying to emerge out of a history of being oppressed and colonization, is how do we get power? We got to define some things. What does it look like for us to be liberated? And what must be done to get us from here to there?
All right. Bayash. Okay, Luca, then one more, and then we'll move on to the next segment of geopolitics.
Absolutely. And, I think that the point about political parties and why I think 625 approaches that conversation differently is not because, we have some antagonism towards political parties as a whole. it is just to recognize the limitations of a political party. What can happen to what you could form a party today, and what happened to ODM and all the rest of them happens to that same party. We have to figure out what underpins a political party that moves differently, and that is not by rejecting what came before that. It's informed by a study of everything that came before that. My brother Ali made a point about Oginga Odinga, and this is one of the things that I feel like we've been thoroughly miseducated about in a way that's constraining our imagination for what's possible. The split between Kenyatta and Oginga Odinga, there's a lot of signs and pieces of that history that suggest that there's an ideological difference between Kenyatta and Oginga Odinga. And Oginga Odinga's preference for socialism against Kenyatta's more capitalist bent, it could be argued, is what helped him form that broad base that was not organized around tribe, but was organized around an idea for what we can change. How do we actually address the plight of the Kenyan people? What is our idea for how that changes? What we are trying to emphasize, I would argue here, is that you have to devote at least as much time to the development of that idea as you do to the organization of a political party. And you can't do that without first taking a look back at everything we've been miseducated about, everything about our history that has not been fully made clear to us, because our forefathers and the generations that came before us, they had an ability to organize around ideas. But the success of the project, the capitalist projects that have happened since, the success of Kenyatta and Moi, and even with his limitations, Kibaki, has been in destroying our ability to organize around ideas. We are saying that we want to do it the way the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army did. It was an idea, it wasn't a tribe. The trade unionists, it was who agitated for so-called independence. It was an idea, it wasn't a tribe. So if we're going to uninstall the software of tribalism, you have to be ready to present a software that people can replace it with, so that we can organize around an idea once again. And that limits the tools that our enemies, as Netfa suggests, our enemies can use to fracture these movements. People will revert to that if you don't give them something to replace it to. So our generation has, and our generation and our supporters have to be as invested in interrogating what those ideas are before we engage in a political solution. Because ultimately, we've seen so many of these people. We've seen the Casmals, we've seen the whatever. If we put people across all these parties, how do we know that these people won't be bought off? How do we know that as soon as they're thrown in prison, they won't surrender like others did? What differentiated the ones who surrendered and the ones who fought and resisted? It has to be with interrogating that and figuring out the idea and how it can be relevant to us and relevant to this point in time is just as important as figuring out the political calculation for 2027.
Thank you. Keep it brief so we can move on to the next segment.
I agree with what he's saying. I think one of the things that our movement has to realize is that there are a lot of people whose tribe and is their identity. We see that even in American politics, where there are people who identify themselves deeply as MAGA before they even are Republican or anything. Their identity is MAGA. So we have people who are Luo first before they're Kenyan, they're Kalenjin first before they're Kenyan, they're Kikuyu first before they're Kenyan. And when they have an ideology that kind of feeds into that idea of like, how do I put it? Nyashinsky put it this way: I'm richer than my neighbor, but we're both in a slum. There are a lot of people whose identity, when threatened, they would rather hold on to that identity, stay in the slum, but they know they're richer than the guy next door. So when we are crafting our language, crafting our ideology, crafting our movements' philosophies, we have to realize that we are going up against deeply ingrained identities. and create a platform where people can deconstruct, first of all, and one that does not also, as you said, that does not point fingers. Let's have compassion for the people who don't know. And I think that is how we begin a movement that in 20 years, we are going to, right now, we are planting a tree that we might not sit in its shade, but 2-3 generations from today might not even understand what we mean by, like, there's one time that Kikuyus and Luos were not friends.
I know, right? Knowing what, did you want to say something? Okay, yeah, please go ahead. Last one, then we move on to the geopolitics.
Can you hear me? Okay. That's good. So my question is about what you guys are saying about tribalism and eliminating tribalism. If it's that's something that can actually happen, I tend to think that tribalism comes from a like self-preservation mindset. When resources are scarce, if I'm in the majority, I have a better chance of survival than otherwise. So my question would be, how do we change what you guys are calling political tribalism? How do we frame that? A good way to put it is what casinos and social media companies do well is they hijack these like primal sockets in our mind, right? Dopamine and the feelings. You feel good when you see a like or somebody shares a post you put up. So they've been able to hijack these primal instincts and use it to benefit them. How do we do that in a political sense where we reframe the tribal narrative so that it's not just, this person's a Kikuyu and this person's a Luo, I'm going to vote for the Kikuyu. It's that the reality is I don't have a market in my village in Kamulu. This person doesn't have a market in Kakamega. We're all suffering. Whoever the president is, our reality, we share more because of our reality than whatever differences exist because of tribe and culture. So my question is how and I think to Luca's point talking about ideology, it makes me think of what the poet said that, you can preach socialism or whatever it may be, but to some of these mamambogas, these boda boda guys, it doesn't mean anything to them. Socialism, capitalism, they just want, money in their wallet. They want food when they go home. They want to be able to educate their children. So I think that's important, but in the day-to-day today, to see the change that you're talking about seeing right now, is it easier to focus on the realities that actually exist on the ground more so than the ideologies that you were talking about?
So after Ali, Haile, I think Haile wants a mic as well.
Oh, okay. So just briefly, I'm going to say this. We had this discussion yesterday with Luca and Joy. My background is in finance, sales, and branding. And there's a saying in Swahili that says, chema chajiuza. But when it comes to public discourse, that doesn't work. And I think part of the problem, not only in Kenya, but across the board, a lot of people who are on the right side, like we're trying to preach the right thing, they come with that mindset that what we're doing is good, so it will automatically sell itself. So when you go to the other part of the other saying, kibaya chajitembeza, so these guys who are stealing from us, they understand that, they understand how to connect with people, hence, like simple slogans, like, like hustler, ilikuwa ni hustler versus dynasty, or like bottoms up, these simple slogans. And a lot of people in the ideological space, they tend to minimize those strategies. Like, what we're doing is great, like we do not need to come up with slogans. But unfortunately, if you're looking at the middle 90%, that's what connects with people. Because what you're trying to do when you're trying to sell something good, it's a more difficult sell, because the other guy can lie, and he's okay with lying. But because you do not have that weapon of lying, you have to work extra hard to come up with nice, simple slogans that the other people can identify. I was joking with Luca and Joy yesterday. We're talking of ideology. The people you're going to talk to don't even know how to spell the word ideology. Yeah. But here you're dropping, like ideology. So one thing that we can learn from these other guys is that they've understood the art of connecting with people in what resonates with them at that particular point in time. Hence, when we talk about Mama Mboga, what the Jaramogis were able to do back then, last year we interviewed on our show Kenya's first political prisoner, Abdul Latif Abdallah. And if you look at some of the things that he was doing back in the 60s, they had a system of where they would go, because back then there was a lot of people who could not read and write. There was a lot of illiteracy. They would go down on the ground, and talk to people based on what those people understand, but of course tied to, like very firm ideologies. They were talking about election rigging in the late 60s, and talking to people about how that is going to affect them. This is easier to hook someone and get someone to start thinking differently in terms of, okay, I think this is a good direction to think, because when the other guy, like comes with 50 shillings and nice slogans that resonate with them, they will always go back to them. And I think that's part of the problem of the moral crowd. The moral crowd sees things like we're selling the right thing, so we do not need to play this slogan game. We have a rapper here, we have a poet. They understand the art of words and what will resonate with people. They play around a lot with words to understand what's going to capture someone's attention. And that is a whole science that people who are on the moral side need to understand, that they need to learn. One person that they can learn from is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is very good. He has very deep ideas, but he has a very simple way in bringing them out and explaining to people. And that's what needs, it's not an easy science, but it's a science that needs to be embedded in whatever is being done. Val.
Thank you so much, Ali. I believe Mr. Haile.
Yeah, I just have a problem, young folks. Let me tell you, don't use tribe. Study tribe, the word. Where did it come from? What is tribe? This is completely a word brought by the British into Africa. Lulu is a nation. Kukuyu is a nation. They're national groups. So for me, when we call our own people tribe, we got a problem here. As far as I'm concerned, I think you can't use a word white people brought into your miseducated mindset and think you would free Africa. We have to change the vocabulary. We have to change how we think, the thought process. We have to accept first, we have been mentally colonized. Look, Fanon, Reed Fanon, Franz Fanon. It is a decolonization of self. Africans are not going to, we're not going to make our history in the way we've been conditioned, with the mindset of our conditioning. We have to liberate ourselves first. I'm always suspicious. I'm from Ethiopia, and I know we made a big disaster. Young people, when they become missionaries, I don't trust them. I like young people who want to change themselves first. Change yourself first. Make revolution against yourself first. What do you think Africans are? A toy? Sometimes we think because we went to school, they didn't go to school. Wisdom don't come from, we just a bunch of miseducated, westernized Africans. And that's why Africa is having a problem now, compared to where at a certain time, the wisdom of our people made amazing confrontation with primitive colonialism. Okay? So the other part I want to also bring is, I think Luca keep going about it, and I don't know what these, he beats around the bushes, but he's talking about, when he says idea, he's talking about class struggle, in my view. This is serious thing that would scare the hell out of you, you and me. We graduated, we went, got degree and everything, and now there's a serious confrontation with the historical process of Africa, where Africa is. And me, I would, you know it better than I, but I'll dare to say in Kenya, I think Kenya is stranded and is frozen in the, from the time of a war of independence. That's where you are. I don't think what you think this parliamentary story you tell is a play. It's a Shakespeare play. You're analyzing a play and think you're analyzing the situation. No, you're analyzing a theatrical play that this manufactured Africans recycle. Parliamentary, I move this, you move that, all over to South Africa, all over Ethiopia, Kenya. We have this, we're mimicking parliamentary stuff without the substance, and then we're analyzing that theatrical play. It's a Shakespeare play, in my view. It has nothing to do with the history making process. History making process is literally making revolution to change systems. The actual confrontation is systemic confrontation. And I would say that, you know, uh, the betrayal of the petty bourgeois Kenyans that were led by Kenyatta, who was a revolutionary when he started out. But when colonialism worked on him and he became a neo-colonial government, and he destroyed all the war of independence, including the Mao Mao. The Mao Mao were a Pan-Africanist movement. I don't know how many of you, I'm not going to say you haven't read, but to me, some of them were in Ethiopia fighting for Ethiopia as British soldiers. And they saw the confrontation of Ethiopian independence during the Italian War in 1935. Okay, and these Africans that were brought by the British to Ethiopia went back, created a nationalist movement that was truly anti-colonialism. And so I would say, I think we have been educated to assume a class of teachers, doctors, nurses. Let's face it, let's accept that is what we're groomed to do. The issue here is now, if we're talking about the oppressed people, then we have to talk about what kind of ideological system empowers working people and peasants of Africa. What kind of ideology, and then debate ideology and discuss ideology. So please, you owe, I think, Africans, you owe Kenyans. If you say you're a student of history, study hard, organize. I mean, the thing that happened there that you're seeing in the screen is a rebellion. Measuring what it succeeded or not is irrelevant in my view, because it's a rebellion. It's a rebellion. What did it show me in Kenya or in Ethiopia and South Africa? It showed me how the petty bourgeois class is violent towards its own children when it comes to its interest. It will kill you. That's what I learned from Kenya. That period that you guys talk about, it's not a moment of ideological confrontation. People rose to correct the parliamentary theatrical imitation we learned from Europeans. I move this, we look ridiculous when I see these wig-wearing Africans go, I move, but then I don't move. What is this? White folks have, it's logical, organic. They came with it from the time immemorial. For us, we have to create our own systemic relationship of the kind of revolutionary society we want to create. If we say revolution, the word revolution means turning something upside down, period. This is not revolution, nor black life is revolution. It's a petty bourgeois discontent. It's a discontented young people. And I think young people have to graduate towards, their profession or becoming, ushers of revolution, which means then studying more. Okay, I'm sitting here and I'm kind of, to tell you the truth, I have to be honest with you, and I'm not even going to disturb you guys anymore because I'm glad you do it here. It's the spirit of my wife and me of this building, and we're glad. And I feel sorry about when I walked in. I just started arguing with our sister. Uh, you know, uh, you know, hero. For me, uh, these are martyrs. You know, when I'm dead, don't call me a hero. If I die confronting the African petty bourgeois uh, class that is a neo-colonial front, I would want to be a martyr. I don't, heroes, itself is a Hollywood world. They have a hero, we want to have a hero. For me, I think we should change our vocabulary and our spellings, the way we construct our ideas in our minds. Because if we think everybody's colonized except me, you're in trouble. We have to say, I myself, I'm telling you, I was a professor at Howard University for 43 years, etc., etc. I do this, I do that. But I'm still fighting to cleanse myself from being colonized by the British educated system. British educated system taught by my own people who went to, who were molded by the British idea of education in a country where we had traditional school in Ethiopia. We replaced it with the British system after the Italian War, and we continue to. A lot of people died. A lot of my age people died, trying to change a world without being prepared first oneself. To me, I think to be a revolutionary is like a priest who wants to be a priest. Uh, has to really go through so much to be a priest in that. The same thing, people want to make social change, they have to go through a whole lot. And I'm sorry to be this note, but Luca, I mean, I don't know what you're scared. You know it. I know you because when you're talking, you're making sense about this thing, you know. But I think that let's say it. Are you guys scared of to say class struggle? You know, this guy in Kenya is no joke. He knows what the hell he's doing. He brought the French now to kick more of your butt, and he's going to kill you more. There's no joke. It's not playing. This is a serious matter. Okay, so please, forgive me. Those of you who have not heard me before here, but I know the Luca gang and the sister Njuri, huh? Wanjuru. I don't want to call Val. I don't want to call her Val. I refuse to call her Valerie. I just say I love that Kenyan language. Her name in Wanjuru. I love that. Why would I call her Valerie? The hell with her if she gets mad at me. Thank you so much.
All right. So I want to respect everybody's time. I would have really loved for us to get into geopolitics because that was the next phase of this discussion. But essentially, in 2022, Kenya and the US have built an increasingly dense relationship, strategic trade partnership, and Kenya became a major non-NATO ally in 2024, as Netfa was mentioning. And Kenya has led a mission to Haiti, and there's been a 2.5 billion health cooperation framework that was signed last year that includes sharing Kenya health data and critical mineral framework that is still being finalized on as of June of that will be finalized of June of 2026. And currently, last month, we had the US build a quarantine facility for Americans exposed to Ebola in the DRC, in Kenya, from they had been exposed to Ebola in the DRC. Despite everything, protests, the court ordered that the construction be halted, and the health minister was held in contempt of the court for continuing with this anyway. And then also, well, you all remember Netfa gave us this briefing about what happened with France. France has moved into space as well, right? So we have all these neo-colonialists and all these institutions moving, but like Haile said, we still have a lot of work. How do we fight these institutions when our own minds are decolonized, right? I mean, are colonized when the language that we're using is still very heavily Western influenced. But because of the interest of time, we will not be getting into it. Um, before we close, I just, by a show of hands, how many of you think that it's possible to think in a nationalistic way rather than a tribalic way? How many of you think it's possible, that is possible? Okay, that's good. And how many of you think that, or by a show of hands, that after this session you'll go home? We have some the worksheets for you. You can take as many as you want home with you and share with your families. But how many of, or your friends, how many of you think that today is the beginning of something that we can, and just be honest, right? Because we want this to be something that is actually tangible. How many of you think that you will get a chance to soul search yourself and try to be, like Haile said, we need to be able to work on ourselves first, right? And that's very critical. So how many of you think or pledge that today will be the beginning of you soul searching yourself and trying to relearn, decolonize your mind and relearn so that we can move on to a brighter future? Okay, I can see some numbers. That's quite good. I don't know if anyone has some closing words or anyone wanted to, yes, share something, and then I'll pass the mic over to Luca to do the closing for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to say that, first of all, I think comparing to other countries where I have been to, and Kenya, I think there is something that Kenyans should be proud of, which is at least freedom of expression in Kenya is highly is accepted compared to most of countries in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Rwanda, in Ethiopia. I get a chance to live in Ethiopia 5 years teaching Swahili there, so I saw that. So I think that's one thing I want you guys to kind of give you a hand applause for yourself. Now, the question of whatever is going on in Kenya, which is going on in all over Africa, is not something that Kenyans can actually overcome by themselves. I think we should be talking about how do we gonna unite Ethiopia and Kenya? How do we gonna unite Somalia and Kenya? How do we gonna unite South Sudan and Kenya? How do we gonna unite Kenya and Tanzania? How do we gonna unite at least Uganda and Kenya? That should be the topic, because we actually have a huge enemy. His Excellency, this gentleman here, Haile, he actually, yes, I call him His Excellency. He is. He touched on French or France coming to Kenya, but it's not actually Kenya only. France is attacking, even like infiltrating inside Ethiopia. Now I'm talking to you. Very strong, actually. And Uganda as well. So, and Tanzania too. So I think that they are kicked out from West Africa, but they are actually putting roots inside East Africa. So I think the whole idea of what we need to do, it should be the unity, because once we are united, we can fight back. But if we are not united, Kenya cannot fight back. We cannot. We're not going to be able to do that. So my concern is actually that this is not even part of discussion. Like, how can we unite Africa? It's not part of discussion. And that's the only solution that we have left. Any other thing, any other movement will come and will fade out as it has been. The struggle continue. But if we are not united, just whatever you are doing, I guarantee you, after like 20 years, you're going to look back and you're going to say, I wasted my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Harambe. One time. Harambe.
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 One time.
Harambe.
One time.
To you, Luca.
We really want to thank all of you for joining us for this conversation. I I want to reflect briefly on the points that some of the points have been made here in the sense of what is 625 and what are we trying to do. We recognize, first of all, that I think all of us saw our young people like us on the street, and we knew we had to do something. The question is, what is that? What are we trying to do? And we don't have all the answers, but we've began to ask the questions, and that's the space that we're in. And we're really grateful to Sankofa, to Haile, to bringing us, not only giving us this space, but challenging us to ask deeper questions about how we actually change the predicament we find ourselves in. And that means for us, looking beyond the curtain of what's going on. It's a study of power. What actually motivates the people who are killing us, who are, whether it's with rifles or with broken systems, the people who are killing us, what motivates them? How do they organize? What can we actually do to confront that? Because we all want to see change like everybody else. We want to see our president replaced, but we don't want to see him replaced with the same thing. And as Haile has suggested to us, and I think many of us agree, we have to start with a re-education of ourselves, a deep understanding of how we got here to begin with. And I think the more that we start, the more that we engage with the generations that came before us, the struggles that they waged, where they were successful and where there were limitations, we're starting to find answers. The picture is far from completely painted, but we are lucky that we have a space like this to start investigating and start asking those questions. And we really just invite all of you to be a part of that conversation. Really invite you to start looking at those things with us, not examining just our own struggle as Kenyans, but we've had conversations here with our Ugandan comrades, our Tanzanian comrades about the struggles they're waging. And the more we look at this, we realize there is something deeper than that's going on. There is something shared across all of our struggles. And that, we believe strongly, starts to give us the seeds of what an alternative future looks like. So we invite you to stay engaged with us, keep having these conversations. Join us for the next conversation, ask hard questions, but we are so grateful that at the very least you share some of your time tonight and be a part of this conversation with us. So thank you so much. Please stay plugged in. Thank you to Sankofa, and thank you to all of you for being here today.
I was not undermining, I was attacking the word tribe. But ethnic issue in Africa, all over Africa, even in my own country now, the ethnic contradiction and aligning yourself around ethnicity is always the easy one. It's the lowest fruit in the tree. So it's serious. I'm not undermining that, by the way. I just want to make sure people get me. But also religious, okay, as much as powerful the ethnic issue is, religiously dichotomized Africa is seriously coming stronger and stronger. I'm actually a filmmaker. I was in, I went to the 3-4 early independence of Zimbabwe. And the last time I was there, the theaters where African films were showing were a gathering of, don't be offended, I'm not against any religion. I just know imperialism used, for example, Protestantism to penetrate Africa. So these Texas proselytizers literally have bought the theaters of Zimbabwe, Harare. They bought the theater where African filmmakers couldn't even show their films in the festival. The last time I went, it was a gathering of the new converted, zealous Africans, and the idea of cultural, For example, I don't know if you know how much of. In fact, you really guys should have, should watch. We can organize it for you. You should watch some of Ousmane Sembène, the Senegalese filmmaker, Safi Faye, the Senegalese filmmaker, Med Hondo, the Mauritanian filmmaker. These are amazing films made against colonialism and primitive colonialism. And these films were showing in those places, and people, and like in Ouagadougou, the people go to African cinema like a normal thing, because Sankara, one of the things he worked hard was getting a cinema policy that transforms human beings. And in Zimbabwe, it caught up where it was people were going to these movies. But what happened was, when missionaries took over the theaters, movie showing stopped literally. And it was an amazing evolution in cinematic, political cinema I'm talking about, not entertainment cinema. So it's very, very, very important to really pay attention to this onslaught religious stuff coming in to add more into the ethnic problem we're facing in Africa. It's a serious issue. When Italy invaded Ethiopia, one of the things they did was, for 40 years they studied religion, they studied the people's spiritual idea, and they came strong, organized, bringing Catholicism and also dividing the people between Islam and Christians, etc. So religion is also a serious matter in Africa. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you so much again.
And on that note, please stick around, have conversation, but that ends the formal part of our program. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, if we could join us for a group photo, that would be awesome. We'd love to post it on our Instagram page.